Welcome to the Land, your bet sports betting show. Looking at week 12, Thursday night football kicks us off here with Pittsburgh in Cleveland. I've got best bets and player prop projections for you as always, but I want to run that giveaway back that we did a few weeks ago, see if we can't get a winner. So jump in the comments, let me know who you think is going to be the first touchdown scorer for each team. If you get that right, I'll throw you into the raffle and choose one of you guys to get the $100 out to. So we'll get $100 out to whoever gives me the correct first touchdown score for both teams in the comments. I'm going to get right into these player prop projections for you right now. So if that sounds good, give that video a like. Let's get right into it. As we get into this game, quick reminder that we have the live show every day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Going to be going through some football stuff with you on Thursdays and Mondays, and we do NBA every single day as well. So you come into there, jump in the comments with your bets. We'll go ahead and go over that stuff. I'll share my screen, show you guys how we find the value on all these plays. But looking at the Steelers offense to kick it off against this Browns defense. Obviously, the Steelers pass offense has been anemic all season. It's also had a quarterback change in the last 4 weeks. So these numbers are for the entire season between both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. But we should mention that in Wilson's 4 games, not much better, to be honest with you. 20th in pass EPA, which is worse than this fourth in pass EPA. 20th in total EPA per play. So they're not really impressive, much more so than they were with Fields. I will say the pass game looks a lot better, right? And Russell Wilson has had the opportunity to get over a couple hundred yards for the most part. He's found George Pickens and brought him alive, so that's been huge. So I don't want to poo-poo too much of it, but I do want to say it's not like the Steelers offense has been revitalized to any kind of like top half of the league form. They are a good rush team, and they have been all season. And more than a good rushing team, I'll say, they have a lot of rushing yards, and they've been winning for a good amount, and they've been able to rely on their defense for the most part this season. So you combine a really good rush defense with the ability to run the ball and at least a consistency to it, and having rushing quarterbacks who are mobile, especially when Justin Fields was out there, really helps you get to the 8th most rushing yards. You got another player who's putting up 40 to 50 a game. It's going to make you look good, but you see the rush EPA. It's not like their offensive line is getting much push at all. 17th in adjusted yards before contact. They're 20th in limiting pressure percentage on their quarterback. So not really impressive on the offensive line. But this Browns defense is kind of a shell of itself from what it was a couple years ago. Still getting good pressure on the quarterback, still have the good defensive line and the edge rushers, obviously Myles Garrett, 3rd in pressure percentage on the season. So they're getting to the quarterback a decent amount, or at least forcing the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. But they're not doing much in the way of stopping the run. 19th in adjusted yards before contact, trying to get into the backfield, limit the running game. So the run game is something to target here for the Steelers, especially because the weather, should mention, looking like it's going to be really nasty. We'll see. It's obviously the night before as I'm recording this. Weather can do funny things, but it seems like there's going to be wind, potentially some snow, freezing temperatures, ice potentially on the field. So it's going to be nasty, kind of lean on the run game for both teams, but I don't know if the Browns are going to have the opportunity to run the ball. As we turn to the Browns offense, we need to mention they also had a quarterback change with Jameis Winston coming in 3 weeks ago and playing the last 3 games. Since then, 28th in pass EPA. I know we all want to think of him throwing the ball all over the pitch, and yeah, to a degree, he's had 44 pass attempts per game, so the yards have been there to a degree for him, but the EPA, the efficiency, not there at all. EPA per play, also 4th worst in the league in that time frame, and with Deshaun Watson, they were worse, so that's why you see 2nd worst pass EPA, but like I'm saying, Jameis Winston has been marginally better for this team, especially in the efficiency. He's got a lot of the sort of end of game trying to come back throws and some long plays to guys like Judy and Tillman so far, but nothing really impressive about them. They're 27th in limiting pressure percentage on their quarterback. And although the Steelers on defense haven't been as good rushing the quarterback as years past, and you might expect with Watt and Highsmith on the outside, they're still 15th in pressure percentage. I still expect them to be able to dominate this Browns offensive line and the run game for the Browns, if they even have the opportunity to run the ball, because they're not down too much or trailing for most of this game. It just doesn't look like they're going to be able to get much rush either. That offensive line looking at 18th in adjusted yards before contact. So the defensive line against them has been able to get pressure. You see this really good rush defense for the Steelers. That's been consistent all season. 8th in rush EPA, 4th in rushing yards, and really good yards per attempt allowed to the running back, very low. So I don't think there's going to be much run game going on for the Browns. We're probably going to see Jameis pass a bunch more. So let's kick things off with famous Jameis and his pass attempts, because we're still getting pretty good value, and this is getting bet up, so you're probably going to need to get to it pretty quick. And we've got a situation where, look, icy, freezing, windy, awful weather, right? I know that. We've got a Pittsburgh defense that is only allowing 6.4 yards per completion, 7th in pass EPA, they're good. So what? This is Jameis Winston. They're not going to be able to run the ball. He's looking to pass the ball all the time. 44 pass attempts per game in his first 3. Granted, in much better weather than we're probably going to see here in Cleveland on Thursday night. But still, once again, do not care. Like, I know that he would rather dink and dunk. I'm still not convinced he's not changing the play to a pass, even when they call a run. And I don't think we're going to be seeing much of the way that Nick Chubb used to run the ball this season at any rate. I think we're going to have to wait till next season to see if he's able to make a legit comeback. So without the weapons there, he's still just going to have to pass the ball. I don't want to take the yards, but if he's throwing the ball 40 times, I think he's going to be able to get 200, 220 yards passing or so. But I'd rather not risk it on that. I think the pass attempts is still something you can bank on for Jameis and an offense that can't run the ball. And I still think he's going to be throwing it to Jerry Jeudy, who still has a very beatable number because these yards are low. Things are being impacted by the projection of the weather and them expecting this to be a run-first game. But once again, I just don't think Cleveland can run the ball. So if we think Jameis is going to be throwing it, this is the man I think he's going to be throwing it to. We all kind of started to think Cedric Tillman was going to be the new receiver, number 1 guy for this team once Cooper left and Jameis came in. We were like, all right, well, it looks like Tillman's going off, so maybe he's the receiver 1. Since then, it's been Jeudy. 98% route participation, just as high as, not high, tied with Tillman as well, but we'll say highest on the team, and 10 targets per game, 6 receptions per game, 119 air yards per game. And he's looking at 98 receiving yards in those games. So more than double what his prop is at for this one. And I'll just go ahead and zag on the weather where everyone's just going, well, we got to take unders on passing and overs on rushing. Like, I'm not buying it yet. I think the weather be damned for this one. Teams are going to do what they want to do. And what this team wants to do is throw the ball. And they might want to run it, but they ain't going to be having much success, especially not with Nick Chubb right now. And it's not that he's not going to have success. He actually looked pretty good, at least in the second half when he got those second half runs for the Browns. But by then it was too late, and his snap share is so low. I think we're going to need to wait till 2025 to have Nick Chubb come back into our lives in the way that he was as a number 1 running back for fantasy owners, right? So until then, I think we've got to bank on him having a limit. There seems to be a snap count for him, 30% last week, hasn't gotten above 42% since he came back from the injury this year, 11 rushes last year, and he was carving him up. He was doing well. The run game was working, and then they just turned away from it. They took him off the field. They put Jerome Ford in for about 56% of the snaps last week. I think you can probably expect a similar split this week against a rush defense that probably isn't even give them many opportunities to rush the ball because they're going to be leading, and this Browns team is going to be needing to pass. One more zag. I'm going to take a field goal kicker to get his field goals. Dustin Hopkins is at 1.5 for plus money, something we're getting again for plus money because of the weather. I'm fine with it because I still think the Browns will be able to move the ball somewhat through the air and get into field goal position. They just never are able to finish it very consistently. You've got a defense that is coming in with the 8th best red zone defense, 48% touchdown rate that they're allowing when you get inside the red zone. Really good. Cleveland, other side of that in terms of their offense getting touchdowns when they get into the red zone, 23rd in touchdown rate. So plus money, thank you to the weather for that. I'm going to take Hopkins to get 2. Kicking off the Steelers with Danger Russ. Zag again. I mean, the passing yards are like $173. He's averaging, or he's had at least 186 in 8 straight games now. I mean, that's just the lowest amount in the last 8 games, so I use that number, but it's still 13 yards higher than what his prop line is at. So I'll just throw that out there, whether he was with this team or obviously the Broncos and even one with the Seahawks. But bad weather, positive game script, I think those both lead to us having to stay away from it. So I think Russ is a look at the over if you're interested in playing it. I'm not looking to attack that in this game. I wanted to bring up that, like, I think they're going to be safe. I can see them not throwing the ball enough for him to get to those yards. But $173 in bad weather for an NFL quarterback is still really low. So I'm certainly not fading it or trying to fade him or anybody like George Pickens for that matter. But I just don't feel like having to go back to those guys in a situation that calls for run the ball a lot and look at 25, 26 rush attempts, probably more actually between Naji and Jaylen Warren. I think you can probably bank on 30. So let's back Naji. He actually has looked really good this year, even with the rush yards and the efficiency on a lot of touches. Once again, as we know, a guy who's consistently getting close to 200. So 63 yards last week against one of the top 3 rush defenses in the league. I ain't gonna hold him against that against him, right? 100 plus yards in 3 of the 4 prior games to that. And this is a plus matchup against a bad Cleveland run defense, not getting any push on the line. As we mentioned, no real good adjusted yards before contact. They're bottom 5 in rush EPA. They're bottom 5 in pass EPA. But there's no reason to go for it to put this game in jeopardy of possibly getting turnovers. Russ has had some turnover issues this season in more than half the games at this point, throwing one. So, with that in mind, you're in a tough divisional matchup with a team that really doesn't seem like they have much unless you give them the game. And the way to do that is turn the ball over. And the way to avoid turning the ball over is give the ball to a man who rarely, if ever, fumbles in Naji Harris in cold weather, etc. Right? So a lot less can go wrong when you have Naji running the ball as opposed to looking to make plays downfield. And Cleveland is without their stud linebacker who had a really scary injury. I believe it was week 8 where he kind of has snapped his neck and he's not back and he's on injury reserve and he's not coming back. I'm not trying to say his name. I'll just call him Jeremiah Owosu. Koromoa. I actually practiced this early, so I can't say it correctly, but he's out on IR. So with that in mind, even more opportunity for Naji to get those rushing yards. You're probably disappointed that this is like the first video in like 4 weeks where I'm talking about a Steelers team and I'm not going to George Pickens. And I'm not saying fade George Pickens once again, but I am saying Darnell Washington's really low, sneaky good target, and seems to be kind of more favored by Russ than Freiermuth has been. If you look at him since he's been out there with Russ, he's gone over in 3 or 4 games. Last week, he had 4 targets, 2 catches, really nice yak as well, put in position to get yards after the catch. 42 yards last week. A lot of those came after the catch. I believe it was like 32 or 33 of them were yak. So he's getting decent targets downfield, but he's also getting and put in good positions on like little bubble screens and things to run with the ball, sort of like as a under the cover threat, if you will. Not someone that's not really being monitored by the defense. But 12 targets, 3 a game since he's had Russ Wilson. One of those in the end zone, or the red zone, I should say, actually got intercepted. But he's gone over the receiving prop in 3 of 4, like I mentioned. And last week he ran more routes than Freiermuth. So not only was he being targeted by Russ more since Russ has become the quarterback, but he's also now participating more with Russ out there. Probably looks like some honest like camaraderie between those two. So I'm going to bank on him for the really simple, small rushing receiving route yards prop here. And I think a potential sprinkle as a long shot TD, not a bad look for the really, really big tight end. One last reminder, I got outlier.bet in case anybody's interested in using one of the best tools around, using it on the live show every day, 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So go ahead and check that out. In the description of the video, got a link if you do want 7 free days. Got you a free trial to see if you want it before you might be interested in paying that monthly fee. But that's all the time we have. Hope to see you guys on the live stream tomorrow. Until I see you next, happy betting.